We've been talking about money, and Sherry mentioned just how much money has been raised, a record amount by the Biden campaign is extraordinary, which gives us a great transition into our next segment, which is going to be a look at where all that money goes. And that's a lot of it goes to buying presidential campaign ads. Steve Skutsky is, as you know, prepared some videos, which include some, you're going to love these. There's some blasts from the past here. I think you'll get a laugh or two out of them. Steve, show us.
Okay, Bob, you're right. Perfect transition. And there's a lot to be learned from these past ads, I think. We want to focus on the whole concept of these ads, the techniques they use, the question of how effective they are. So we're going to start in 1960 when television was just one decade old and work our way forward from there.
Every Republican politician wants you to believe that Richard Nixon is, quote, experienced.
I just wondered if you could give us an example of a major idea of his that you had adopted.
If you give me a week, I might think of one. I don't remember.
Khrushchev is a cold, hard, ruthless man. He feeds upon weakness and doubt. And we must never make the mistake of letting him think we are weak.
8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes to make a world in which all of God's children can live.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. This is about the government. This is about credibility. This is about electronics. This is about bugging. This is about dishonesty. This is about stealing. And this is how you stop it, with your vote.
Jimmy Carter knows what it's like to work for a living. Until he became governor, he put in 12 hours a day in his shirt sleeves during harvest at his farm.
Only an all-encompassing program combining restraint in government spending with economic growth in the private sector will work. I offer precisely that kind of program.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
In Ronald Reagan's America, everyone is comfortable and everything is fine. But in the real America, the one he doesn't see, people have to take a second job just to get by. Millions have no job at all. Is America back, or can we do better? That's the debate. Mondale Ferraro, fighting for our future.
Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend.
Michael Dukakis has opposed virtually every defense system we developed. And now he wants to be our commander-in-chief. America can't afford that risk.
The George Bush promise.
Read my lips. No.
Then he gave us the second biggest tax increase in American history. You don't have to read his lips, read his record. Clinton Gore, for people.
Some real classics there. So let's find out what our panelists thought of all that. Bob, take it away.
I think the one I remember the most, I'm sure everybody will agree with me, was the Daisy ad of 1960.
I think Mourning in America was really powerful, and it had such resonance that it was picked up. In my favorite ad in the Bernie Sanders campaign, he had a great ad that sort of a montage of America, but it had basically the same kind of positive theme, and that's the one that really sticks with me. The Daisy ad was, of course, as I recall, only ran once.
Once.
It
aired once. NBC Movie of the Week. And did you all notice
Yeah.
nowhere Goldwater mentioned?
but the NBC switchboard almost blew up. People calling and screaming about the anti-Goldwater ad. And that was it.
You remember the slogan in 64, right? In your against Goldwater, in your guts, you know he's nuts.
No, he's right, extremely right. I was working as an intern from my cradle at the 1964 Democratic Convention that was in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey at the time. And a Democratic activist and contributor, she is now no longer with us, from California, Carmen Warshaw, rented a plane which had the banner running from the tail, which said, "In your heart, you know he's right, extremely right." And it hovered over the Democratic convention for that entire time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the anti-Dukakis ad was actually pretty successful as well, where he's roaming around in a armed military tank, wearing this helmet, and I think that it almost demonstrated a candidate, sort of shooting himself in the foot.
Anybody else?
That was everybody's reaction too. I mean,
Yeah.
those of us who were covering that campaign, when that commercial came out, we all went, "What?" Because he looked weird.
Yeah, he did.
The helmet didn't.
Well, that's something that television can't stop. I think you look weird. You look weirder on television. I just want to add one thing to what Bill Boyarsky said about Mourning in America. There is an ad that Biden is now showing that reminds me very much of the tone, the ethos of Mourning in America. And it's the ad that was played during the World Series with Sam Elliott as the narrator. And it had the same optimistic, reaching out dynamic that Mourning in America had. And the minute I saw that ad, I flipped back to Mourning in America, which I do think also is a very powerful ad. And I think this Sam Elliott ad has some of the same ability to have people respond to it.
And we're going to be showing a brief clip of that coming up.
Let me just make a point about the mushroom cloud and the Daisy ad.
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yeah, as Bill said, it only ran once, and there was that enormous response to it, or angry response to it. And yet they were raising an issue of extraordinary importance, that we do have, in fact, the ability to destroy the world with nuclear weapons. That has not been an issue, really, very strongly in subsequent presidential campaigns. And this year, there is a treaty that the United States was, I think at one point, might have been, maybe we haven't been a signatory to it, I can't remember. But in any case, it's about to get the same amount of signatures that are required to make it effective worldwide. And the Trump administration is trying to talk other countries out of it, even though it's a ban on the creation of nuclear weapons. And yet we have stayed away from that issue in all of these presidential campaigns. And we still have exactly the same capacity to destroy the world that we had in 1954. And furthermore, we have sole authority to launch a nuclear attack with the president of the United States, with all that means about who the president might mean, what the pressures on him might be, and all of the mistakes that might be made along the way, when in fact there is a history of mistakes that are absolutely terrifying. It's just interesting to me that it never appears in political dialogue.
And now I'm going to take you back to Steve. He has more campaign videos as we move ahead, Steve, to the 21st century.
Next, we've got Bush versus Gore, Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, and everything in between. So here are some of the most memorable ads from those campaigns.
Newspapers say Gore has a problem telling the truth. Now Gore promises smaller government, but Gore is actually proposing 3 times the new spending President Clinton proposed. Why does Al Gore say one thing when the truth is another?
Why does he squander the surplus on a tax cut that goes to those making over $300,000 a year? Higher interest rates, deficits. That raises one big question. On the economy, does George Bush know what he's doing?
In which direction would John Kerry lead? Kerry voted for the Iraq War, opposed it, supported it, and now opposes it again. He claims he's against increasing Medicare premiums, but voted 5 times to do so. John Kerry, whichever way the wind blows.
I know John Kerry is lying about his first Purple Heart because I treated him for that injury.
John Kerry lied to get his Bronze Star. I know. I was there.
He's the biggest celebrity in the world. But is he ready to lead?
So what exactly are Britney Spears and Paris Hilton doing in a presidential campaign ad? Well, the McCain campaign says it's to suggest that Barack Obama is more interested in building a reputation as an international celebrity than in running a traditional campaign for president. McCain advisors note that Obama's adoring fans follow him everywhere he goes, even in Germany, where more than 200,000 showed up last week to hear him speak. The Obama campaign rushed out a response ad.
John McCain. His attacks on Barack Obama, not true. False. Baloney. The low road.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain.
If you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own.
To say that Steve Jobs didn't build Apple, that Henry Ford didn't build Ford Motor, to say something like that is not just foolishness, it's insulting to every entrepreneur, every innovator in America.
The newest attempt by Republican candidates and the super PAC supporting them to weaken Donald Trump.
Bimbo, dog, fat pig. Real quotes from Donald Trump about women.
Donald Trump campaign violence.
Donald Trump will always put himself ahead of us.
Voters from Ohio to Florida are being bombarded by ads like these.
My job was to sell people on Trump University. I was ashamed to work there.
More than 23,000 commercials attacking Donald Trump have run nationwide.
Every time you attack Donald Trump, Trump goes up.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Maybe it's because the director of the FBI said you lied about your email.
There was classified material emailed.
Or maybe it's because your policies have allowed ISIS and terrorism to spread. Or maybe it's because you call Americans deplorable.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorable.
Quite a collection there. Bob, back to you.
Hey, thank you very much. Yes, a great collection there.
Are these ads significantly more negative, more nasty than the first selection of ads we have seen? And I asked that question because, oh boy, you ain't seen nothing yet, right, Steve? But I'm serious. It seems to me the graph is going higher in terms of hard-hitting and nastiness. And it also reflects to me a growing distrust of government and ads taking advantage of that in communicating with voters.
I think that's very true, but you certainly don't get any nastier than the mushroom cloud ad, or the daisy ad, as it's also called. And we heard McGovern accusing Nixon of stealing and corruption and a whole lot of things that sound very familiar.
That's true.
That ad, that McGovern ad was hard to read by the standards of today's great ad makers. This wouldn't pass. It was a series of newspaper clippings. It's hard to follow, buried the message.
Yeah, I love Kerry going back and forth on the windsurfing board. I thought that was a beautiful use of the video.
Yeah,
and I like
underlined the flip-flop, but it underlined his elitism.
Sure.
It's very subtle and very powerful.
Both at one time.
I thought the Romney singing ad was also very interesting. I hadn't seen that before. At the first, until we started looking at this, and I thought it was kind of funny and probably had some impact. But I think my impression is that over the years, that in general Republicans have been more I think, successful with attack ads than Democrats. Not to say the Democrats haven't done some that have worked really well, but the John Kerry thing, I mean, boom, that just put him right out. And of course, you know, well, I guess the FBI certainly were included in putting away Hillary Clinton. So you can't blame that just on a negative ad.
Dukakis as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you have something?
I was going to bring up the prism of time, because when you look at these ads, especially the ones involving people like John McCain, who, you know, passed away not long ago and is now remembered and thought of as a true American patriot and hero, which, as somebody who interviewed him many times as a senator in Arizona, he was one of those genuine people. If you had to ask him tough questions, he got it. He understood that you had to do it. It was your job. And he didn't turn it around on you. He answered the question as directly as he could. And, you know, we all moved on with our day. So in some respects, I think when we look back on some of these advertising from people who, I was joking, I think before the program started, about how, and I think it's George W. who calls Bill Clinton his brother from another mother. And, you know, they were on opposite sides and about as opposite as they could get. And what happened there was, after they're both out of office, and George W. sent Bill and his father to do, I think it was tsunami relief in the Indian Ocean. And Bill made sure that the elder Bush got the room that had the bed in it on the plane and made sure he was comfortable. And that literally turned the tide between these two former opponents into today they are friends. So isn't that a remarkable thing when you look back on these advertising and these advertisements on how things can change and how perspectives can change? But yet today we're still in a world that is so remarkably polarized.
Now, for the rest of the program, we're going to be dealing with this year's presidential campaign. Back to Steve Skutsky.
In the final 6 weeks of the presidential campaign, an estimated $400 million is being poured into television ads in key battleground states. We've talked about this already in the program, but we're going to get into it more now. About half of that is from outside groups supporting the candidates. Now, we're going to include two ads from the Lincoln Project, a group of Republicans supporting Biden. Some of these are pretty strong attack ads. Do they make a difference? We'll see what our panelists think next. But now to the video.
We choose to bring back justice, respect, and dignity to this country. We choose Joe Biden to lead us all towards that American promise together.
Mass incarceration has put hundreds of thousands behind bars for minor offenses. Joe Biden wrote those laws.
We do everything but hang people for jaywalking in this bill.
Joe Biden's policies destroyed millions of black lives.
As Joe says, we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. But together, it's a battle we can win.
Kamala Harris ran for president by rushing to the radical left, embracing Bernie's plan for socialized medicine, calling for trillions in new taxes. Voters rejected Harris. They smartly spotted a phony. But not Joe Biden. He's not that smart. Biden calls himself a transition candidate. He is handing over the reins to Kamala while they jointly embrace the radical left.
Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. It's lawlessness. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Fires are burning and we have a president who fans the flames. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it.
Seattle's pledged to defund its police department by 50%, even including a proposal to remove 911 dispatchers from police control.
Joe Biden said he's absolutely on board with defunding the police. Listen closely.
Yes, absolutely.
Hello, you've reached 911. I'm sorry that there is no one here to answer your emergency call, but leave a message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Crime will rise.
And with their savings run out, many are giving up hope. Millions worry that a loved one won't survive COVID-19. There's mourning in America. And under the leadership of Donald Trump, our country is weaker and sicker and poorer.
Tear gas was used to remove peaceful protesters from Lafayette Park.
The greatest economy in history. We will crush the virus.
Total cases in the U.S. now top 5.8 million.
No one will be safe in Biden's America.
Joe Biden doesn't need everyone in this country to always agree. Just to agree, we all love this country.
China is an economic rival to the United States.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. I mean, they're not bad folks.
Everybody has known from day one how smart, how bright Hillary is. You know, the rapidly rising
Something's wrong with Donald Trump. He's shaky, weak, trouble speaking, trouble walking. It's time we talk about this. Trump is not well.
Okay, Bob, it's all yours.
Obviously, I'm sure all of you have something to say on this. Let me start with Dave Bryan, and then we'll go right around.
I thought it was really interesting that the Biden ads, at least he had some positive things to say, about him and the campaign and what he would be doing. They had a very strong critical one on the coronavirus, which is to be expected. I was surprised there wasn't more of that coming from the campaign. The Trump ads, attack, keep on attacking. No question about that. In some cases, even untrue and exaggerated. But the toughest ones, I think, were what we talked about going into this, were from the Lincoln Project, attacking Trump. I love the way they put in "Mourning in America," that phrase, even in one of their attack ads on him. And I thought they were very effective ads, very hard hitting from the Lincoln Project.
Warren, what's your take?
Well, one of the questions was whether these ads are very effective at this stage in the campaign. There's a great story today in the New York Times about the AOC campaign in New York, where she is about as guaranteed to win re-election as any congressperson has ever been. And yet there is $30 million being spent in that campaign. And the explanation is that on the one hand, she's getting an enormous number of small contributions from people all over the country, $17 million worth. And on the other hand, the Republican is getting so many contributions from Republicans around the country who, just because they hate AOC, and there's a Republican strategist quoted as saying, I don't think that the people who are contributing to the Republican know who he is. They just know they don't like her. So I'm wondering at this point if there is any, as somebody suggested earlier, with all this money that's being spent, if it really is being effective.
I don't know. That's why I asked the question, Warren, and I honestly do not know. I mean, it isn't only money. It's what you do with the money. It's the message that you articulate. It's how credible that message is, whether or not people trust the candidate and believe in that candidate. And no amount of money is going to buy that trust, period. And particularly when it pertains to television ads, I think it's paid media, not earned media, although there are questions about earned media and news coverage. Now, a point to Dave in Mourning in America, I think it's a fabulous ad, but how many people remember the powerful Ronald Reagan ad? That was like, I don't even want to say. What?
84.
Almost 40 years ago. Can you believe it? I mean, it was cool, and it certainly poked the finger in the eye of people who remember Ronald Reagan in that marvelous ad. But the younger generation, shall we say, what's that all about? that distresses me. Another point about the Lincoln Project is how many people actually see these ads. They are most visible in Washington, D.C., and they have an audience of one, and he lives in the White House. I don't know how much money the Lincoln Project has to get those ads far beyond Washington and maybe a couple of other, maybe battleground states. And this goes back to the question about money and whether those ads can be effective if they can't be seen in the first place.
This morning there was an ad that maybe some of you caught it. Maybe it's only just been running. It was on Amy Coney Barrett, and it was sponsored by a conservative group. There was no mention of Donald Trump in there, but obviously the implication was right there. Dan Blackburn, looked like you had something.
I was just going to mention that this morning I saw some ads that were on CNN that at least would have gotten national eyeballs because CNN obviously is all over the country. I was a little surprised to see them, but they sort of jumped off the screen at me and said, "Hey, we're here." And it was clear that somebody was spending serious money. They were obviously anti-Trump. They were more negative on Trump than they were pro-Biden. So I think they were partly the Lincoln Project involved in that.
I was going to ask you, Jim. I know you're about to speak, but also, and I was interested in the ad buys during this campaign on your Central Coast stations.
Well, combining all of them together, it's a few million, and that's a lot for a small market. But to get back, to Sherry's question about Lincoln Project and money, I think what they're doing is spending a lot of money, or a relatively lot of money by today's standards, on digital. And so Facebook, Twitter, and people's social media. And I think that's where a lot of those types of ads are going. But the point I wanted to make was, so when Mourning in America was done in 1984, it was an incumbent Republican president running for re-election. This time around, Mourning with America with the U is basically a group of Republicans who are absolutely 100% steadfastly against the incumbent Republican president. And then add on top of that, the incumbent Republican president I don't know of any, well, that's not true. I have seen ads where he talks about patriotism and keeping things great and whatnot, but he spends a lot of time and effort on things to tear down his opponent. So his idea of positive is waving the flag, making appeals to a very specific group of people, I think, who are the ones who put him into office. But yet, so his positive is much more limited in that regard.
Bill Boyarsky, we haven't heard from you on this yet.
Well, I think that the Lincoln Group ads are very well done, and if there's an Oscar for ads this year, they certainly deserve it. To return to the point that I made in the previous segment, which was completely out of turn, that was the only ad I've seen in the batch we got that talked about the pandemic. That is the defining issue of this campaign. It is the World War II of our campaign. It is the Vietnam War of this year. It is the one thing that is on, you can count on it being on everybody's mind. And I think a good ad campaign should operate with a sense of what people are concerned with. The old Mourning in America ad capitalized on the idea that under that incumbent president, things were pretty well. And the contrast with the Mondale ad, which the point of that was things were pretty bad, that actually wasn't true because things were going pretty well. So the ad campaign has to capitalize on what people are worried about. And as I said before, in my mind, there's only one thing they're really worried about.
We're going to move on to the.
Wait a minute, Bob. Could I just make a clarification? Since Bill got to contradict himself, or didn't contradict himself, but pulled back. I didn't mean to suggest that money was being spent on TV campaigns in AOC's campaign, but rather that the political environment is so polarized that people contribute to candidates big money whether they really know what they're up to or not, just because they don't like the other candidate. I was just trying to make that point as a measure of whether or not campaign ads are effective if people have already made up their minds.
I just wanted to make one quick point.
Sure.
Sometimes these ads don't get a lot of actual coverage, but they're picked up by the network, CNN, and so forth, and shown as part of news stories. I've seen a lot of those, so they get a lot of free mileage out of that, and maybe they're seen by 100 times more people than they were actually seen in the ad buys.
Good point.